Mesothelioma is an aggressive form of cancer that is caused by exposure to asbestos. Asbestos was widely used in construction materials for much of the 20th century before its health risks were fully understood. If you were exposed to asbestos and have since developed mesothelioma, you may be entitled to compensation through a mesothelioma lawsuit. Here are the key steps to determine if you have a valid case. Exposure history. The first step is documenting your exposure history to asbestos. Were you or a loved one exposed through an occupation like shipbuilding, insulation work, brake repair, construction, etc.? Secondary exposures through living with an occupational exposed person can also put one at risk. Try to obtain records showing dates and locations of exposure if possible through past employers or unions. Even brief exposures could cause mesothelioma decades later. Medical diagnosis. You will need a firm medical diagnosis of mesothelioma from pathology tests and radiological exams. Different types of pathology reports may indicate different asbestos fiber types responsible. This medical proof is required to show causation between exposure and cancer development. Ask your doctor for fully detailed medical records. Applicable statute of limitations. Different states have different statutes of limitation regarding the maximum number of years after diagnosis that a mesothelioma lawsuit can be filed. These typically range between 1 to 3 years. It's important to consult a lawyer as soon as possible after diagnosis to ensure a case can still be submitted on time based on your state regulations. Potential defendants. Research all companies, manufacturers, or employers that could be partly responsible for your asbestos exposure. This may involve past employers, construction companies, product manufacturers, premises owners, or distributors. Your lawyer can help determine liability and legal responsibility. Even bankrupt companies may have accessible funds. Type of exposure. The type, frequency, and duration of asbestos exposure can impact the strength of a case. Occupational exposures are generally viewed more favorably than household or low-level risks by courts. However, all contributing exposures should be considered. High intensity and/or regular and prolonged exposures result in better mesothelioma case postures. Jurisdiction. Different state courts and judges can have varying approaches. Awards and settlements often depend more on jurisdiction than specific case merits. Consulting an attorney experienced in your local mesothelioma litigation is important. They understand the nuances of presenting cases locally. Statutory caps. Several states have enacted statutory caps that place a maximum limit on non-economic or punitive damages that can be awarded through lawsuits. These caps can severely limit compensation, so it's important to factor this into case viability based on your location. Precedent cases. Your attorney should research verdicts and settlements from factually and jurisdictionally similar past mesothelioma cases. When cases with stronger evidence have resulted in smaller awards, it indicates challenges your case may face. Precedent also indicates the likely required standard and strength of evidence needs within the local legal climate. Family member testimony is also often a highly persuasive part of presenting mesothelioma cases to sympathetic juries. Establishing the human toll of the disease through a wife or son can be very impactful. Overall, the combination of objective medical evidence, documented exposure history, applicable law, and ability to prove causation are key in determining if full compensation is a realistic pursuit through litigation. An in-depth consultation with an experienced mesothelioma attorney is necessary to truly assess the viability and potential of any individual case for asbestos-related cancer. They can carefully evaluate all relevant medical records, exposure circumstances, legal landscape, and provide an honest case evaluation. This determines whether proceeding with a mesothelioma lawsuit is justified or if an alternative path forward may be recommended instead. With proper preparation and strategy, many mesothelioma victims and their families have succeeded in obtaining just compensation through the legal system, even against formidable opposition from corporate interests. The right advice at the outset of the process is invaluable for successfully navigating complex litigation and ensuring all options are fully explored. While no monetary award can undo the tragedy of a mesothelioma diagnosis, proper compensation can help alleviate practical burdens and honor those lost to the consequences of asbestos exposure. A dedicated mesothelioma lawyer working with compassion and expertise can make an enormous difference.